I can give you that.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we've gone live. And welcome, Jesse. Lovely to speak to you again. Um, so there's a couple of things I've been doing just at the beginning of each live session just recently. So before people come in, I just want to quickly cover. There's a couple of sort of standard announcements: DV 2020 and DV 2021. The appeal is still going through. We can't predict when we're going to get the result on that. So we just have to wait for that appeal. There's nothing we can do until then. There's no clues or any way we can predict what the appeal court will decide. Do you have anything to add to that, Jesse? Or
I mean, obviously I'm interested and everyone's interested and thoughts and prayers to everyone suffering from the tremendous earthquake over there in Turkey and Syria. And I know there's many class members in Gomez who are affected by that and should be here by now. And I think I've looked at the DC Circuit decisions that have come out. There was a big immigration decision and in an unrelated case, but that obviously took some time for them. I think we're probably next to go. Next, we're very close. Could have been Friday. I've said it could have been yesterday. So, but I always say this too. I mean, we have a president who could call off the dogs any day he wants. But that hasn't happened. They settled. Another. You saw the order in another case, the PARS equality case, where 41,000 non-immigrants are going to be able to reapply and without, because they were done wrong on the waivers. But we just have to wait and take it one step at a time. And right now that step is being patient. And that's what we have to do.
Since you mentioned it on the Muslim ban case that's been just won, I just want to make clear to people it doesn't affect DV because it's only non-immigrant. And Jesse, there's no sort of useful aspect of that for any of the other cases. I think to me, the Muslim issue, at least for 2017 to 2019, seems to be a settled issue. Like, I can imagine that we could reopen the box for a Muslim case in DV 2020 under Gomez.
Yeah.
Only through Gomez, right? And but and then it doesn't affect 21. So, but to me, 2017, 2018, 2019 Muslim ban DV cases have no prospect of recourse, as far as I'm aware. Is that correct?
There is that one case, but it wasn't a class, which was that Al-Makrami case.
All right.
I think that is kind of following the quote unquote coattails of our case to see what happens. And so, but I think those are for. It's not a class. I think it's for a number of individuals, and it's
12 people. I think. I think there's probably only one or two left.
And people would say, well, why not? I mean, really, Congress should. They've done some good things for Afghan refugees. They've done some great things for Ukrainian refugees, statutory. Like they've actually passed a law, amazing as it sounds. And there's nothing stopping them from really taking care of the diversity visa applicants who were done poorly and lost their chance due to kind of a regime that didn't feel like issuing diversity visas. That includes 2020 and 2021, and for that point, and we're still dealing with it with some consulates who haven't seen the light on the wall. But yeah, for now, it's really a wait and see and try to be patient, knowing that that's a tall ask from us to stay patient.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Okay. So look, let's talk about the sort of the topic that you and I had discussed. We came to do this live chat this morning, partly to just say hi, partly to do Super Bowl Sunday tradition that we talk on Super Bowl Sunday, but also mostly because of problems, generally speaking, in education documents in a couple of embassies. I don't think this is just restricted to the couple of embassies that we're talking about, but you've been dealing with some issues recently about education. So let me just sort of state, kind of thing for the record, what this whole deal about education is, what the standard is that that the government should be applying, and and how it affects DV cases, right? Oh, what have I done? I've just. Oh, have I? Are you still there? Yeah, I've managed to switch off my screen. Okay, so the standard for education, or the standard for the DV lottery, says you either need to qualify through education or through a work experience route. Now, work experience I'll put to one side for a minute. It's slightly more complicated, but the normal way of going through DV lottery, the normal way of meeting this one requirement is one requirement that has two ways of satisfying it, right? And the DV lottery normal way is through education. The requirement, as it's described, talks about you have to have an education, if done abroad, not in America, then the education has to be equivalent to a US, a formal course of education, equivalent to a US education, which is essentially high school graduation. Now, high school graduation in the USA typically occurs for a kid around about 18 years old. Can be a little bit less, can be a little bit more, but it should be a formal course that has taken 12 years of education, typically. But the main point is that it's the point at which you can go into college. College in US terms is the same as university in other countries. So it's the point at which you graduate from high school with enough of a qualification, with enough of a success factor, as it were, on your education, to be allowed to go into a college or university with no further testing required, with no further requirements, education requirements. They specifically say you can't use a GED route, which means in US terms, a GED is a way of taking a test that proves your standard of education that you received through school is enough to get you into college without you actually having graduated through high school. And that's for people that, perhaps, went a different path in life and didn't stay in school, but they're smart and they're educated and, they're smart enough to be able to go into college.
You know what we used to call that? You know what we used to call a GED?
What?
It's a good enough dude.
Good enough dude. Actually, it was implemented for veterans, right? So
yeah. So some would leave at 17.
Yeah, leave at 17. You go off to fight your war, and you come back and you're told you can't go into college. So in order to get around that, they invented this process, a test that you could say, in maths, English, social science, and I can't remember the four, but there are four that are critical to that. But in these core subject areas, I've got a good enough education. I'm a good enough dude to get into college. That was the point, and it's continued to this day. So if you've gone through a non-formal course of education in a foreign country and you have to take some sort of test in order to get to perhaps as a mature student, perhaps you didn't finish your schooling, your normal schooling route, and you want to enter college later on, you might be able to do that in some countries by taking some sort of test or exam. And that's exactly the sort of thing that should be disallowed in DV lottery according to the laws. Then the other thing that they specifically disallow, by the way, is vocational studies. So if, in the UK at 16, for example, when I was a kid, at 16, you could finish what we called high school. It wasn't the same level as USA high school. There were then 2 years of A-level education when I was a kid. The alternative to that was you could go down a vocational route. You could say, okay, I'm going to be an engineer, which is what I did, funny enough. I want to be an engineer, so I'm going to go through a technical schooling program, which will guide me towards my vocational result. Now, that is not allowable. That's not enough to meet a requirement for the DV lottery. So people have to be careful about that education. But hopefully I've stated that reasonably well. I've got some sort of evidence backing up what I say, but I think that's probably enough. Now we have the problem with some embassies that are not accepting that sort of proof from foreign education systems. You want to talk about that, Jesse?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people have reached out seeking some assistance because they're either being put in administrative processing or outright refused. And administrative processing shows up maybe as a refusal, but it's non-final. And I know it's really confusing for everyone every single year. But if you're in 221G, if you have a sheet that says 221G on the top, and they say educational requirements, well, they're still thinking about it. If they say ineligible or disqualified, and they actually cite another provision, that's a final denial. And a lot of people will reach out to me and say, hey, well, I want to fight this. Let's go to federal court in the United States. Well, guess what? You really can't. There's only one particular time when we've had success fighting for diversity visas, and that's when there's delay or outright no visa. There's no visas being issued. It's not about the qualifications. Now, if a consulate said, you have been accepted to Harvard University or MIT, but we don't take any documents from your country, there's nothing that can satisfy us. You could potentially think about suing in that instance, because that's the equivalent of kind of a no visa policy. But what cannot happen is for individuals who say, I disagree with the consular decision. I think my grades are good. I think I could go to college. Well, it's your word against his word. And, when you're going to pay a lawyer or someone else to help you, or to, you have to understand that we need almost blatant proof. Like, you have an acceptance letter from a college in the United States saying that you could be accepted here, and you don't have it. Right. And the other instance is simply where you've given them that type of proof, but they've put you in administrative processing, and you don't think you'll ever get a decision because they've told, maybe they've turned away from you. But, I think people need to understand it's not, and we've done this in the diversity visa space. We've had success litigating, although last year, all the lawsuits, including mine, ultimately were unsuccessful. And the Department of State actually got so fed up with litigation, they oversubscribed or over issued past the statutory limit. But again, it breaks my heart to see people reach out to me and, say, hey, you got to help me. They don't think they denied me because my educational documents. Number one, and this is the final point before I turn it back over to you, Simon. So we have to understand too, a lot of people want to do these group lawsuits. They've heard about all the success with groups. Well, for educational, unless it's a blanket, nobody from Somalia is going to be able to satisfy us. Unless it's something like that and we have it in writing, it's going to be an individual type case. And I know attorneys may disagree with me, but I don't see this as a group issue. I've talked to Simon about this. I've been very deliberate. I've turned away clients because I think it's a very kind of case by case. What documents did you show and what was said to you about the reason why they didn't qualify? Maybe your grades were low. Maybe your documents are not genuine, but right. I think everything is case by case.
Yeah. There is, there's some difficulties in, so just to sort of read back what you said there, what you're saying is that you need to be a perfect candidate in a demonstrable way that you can say, look, anybody could look at this case and they could figure out that this person has met the educational standard because this person, as you say, may have been accepted to Harvard. They may be a highly bright, very smart, person, but they've got documents that the embassy considers to be, not reliable, not trustworthy. Yeah. And so you would need some other proof to establish that, yes, not only, a normal college, a US college, believes this person good enough to come into their college. And actually, it's not just a normal college, it's Harvard or it's, MIT or something. It's a, beat that, Mr. CEO, Mr. Consular Officer. Yeah. And so that sort of perfect storm of, of evidence is what you would need in order to then have a lawsuit that's got a chance of succeeding or is worth pursuing for the cost and everything involved, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not even talking about a lawsuit. I'm talking about usually you can go get supervisory review at consulates, or you can reach out. They have a program. You can go and email LegalNet. I'm
Yeah.
talking about representing you as an attorney before the consulate and saying, hey, here's the file, here's what they do. You put something together and you try to engage with them so that they take a second look at your case. Because what happens inevitably in my world is people will email me and say, you got to help me. And I say, be happy to help you. That's my job, is to help people. That's what I do. And then they want to say, what's my chance of success? What is it going to cost?
Right.
Well, how do you, and then I'm like, oh, I guess it's maybe 76 to 80. I feel like a weatherman sometimes, right? And then and then they're like, why do you have to charge? Well, I have to charge because I am not a non-for-profit. I have employees. My time, I have people who want to pay me for other things. And so I ultimately feel like I'm the one who's the bad guy. Right. But I need people to understand. I think we all do. My job is to be an honest servant for you. And part of that requires, if you want good work, it requires not only payment, but it also requires some level of risk in your part, because it's not like you pay an attorney in the United States and you have a guaranteed. You don't pay anyone and get a guarantee.
No.
And I think the audience needs to understand that when you're dealing with this, if you've already been refused or told, we don't think this is good enough, we have, we can't say we have a slam dunk. We can't be certain about it. Right. We have to understand that. So I think this type of, video that we're trying to put here is to just really tell the audience in an honest and reasonable way that there's help available, but it's not as if you just hire an attorney and you get a visa and you move here and, we have a parade.
Yeah, exactly. So really the smarter answer to all this might be to go more properly prepared to the interview if you think there's any concern, right?
Yeah, I wonder if, and I don't do enough in the educational space, if there's like a certification board. I know there is for like high school athletes where their grades may be low and they say, hey, you could even pay, someone probably who does this type of thing, the certification. Are my grades in this degree equivalent?
Yeah, that's certainly available. Yeah.
Or, I think the DV, there's an opportunity maybe in the diversity visa community. If you've got these grades, I qualified, and this is what I submitted, and we need to do a better job of engaging with each other from years past. Like now, and we talked about this a little bit, consular officers and consulates don't always keep to the same standard. They change them, and different consulates have different standards.
Yeah, that's very true.
And we need to be aware of that. So I guess the one thing is, don't walk into your interview. We say this all the time. I remember we said this last year with our clients, right? You have to prepare for that interview and have everything be over prepared. And don't wait to the interview to have someone question your educational documents. Try to get as much information as you can and present it to the consulate. So this is what these degrees mean. This is what happens in our country. I know this would allow me into the United States college system because why? Yeah, maybe because your high school or your educational system tells you that, and it's posted somewhere.
Right.
But you need to. Yeah, I definitely got to be prepared. Paper your case.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So let's just make that more clear. So if I were a candidate, with documents from Somali, let's say Somaliland, etc., I would be looking for, as you said there, Jesse, a couple of bits of evidence that would say that the education I went through is acceptable for universities, let's say in, first of all, my region of Africa, right? So, demonstrate by, communication with the university and, a recognized, legitimate university in Africa, a well-known one, right? Perhaps if you're going to Nairobi, contact a Kenyan university and say, with these, prior to the interview, no point waiting until after the interview, like do it prior to the interview, with these educational documents that I've got, would I be accepted to, a bachelor's degree course in your university? They write back and say, yes, that's good. That's proof on a letter heading from that university. That's good proof. or if they've got something published on a website that says, we're accepting candidates from Somalia with this proof. Same thing for the Moroccans that are going through similar sort of problems. Same sort of procedures. Ideally, investigate and look into the university college entrance requirements for colleges in the USA, right? Don't find some crappy college that nobody's ever heard of. Go look at some of the bigger ones, right? And look for, they've often got pages where they say, foreign applicants, the process for foreign applicants, right?
Well, you know what they do too? There's a whole educational, you can get actual student visas to come to the United States. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're called the F1 student visa. And there's a whole system. It's called SEVIS, SEVIS, where you go and engage and you actually try to see. I've graduated from Accra. I want to go to Boston College, and they kind of have guidelines for you. I would go and look at those. Do you match up? Would you get in? I'm not talking about getting into the university, because they have their own systems. Would you be eligible to apply? Precisely. And if it comes across as yes, I want to print that out and I want to bring it with me.
Yeah, exactly. So that, and then you are perfectly entitled to, to present that additional documentation. So you say, when they ask for your educational documents, say, here are my educational documents. And although I didn't attend this university, I got accepted to go to Boston College, based on my education credentials. And I actually went a different path in life, but that's what I was going to do, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, I'm eligible. Yeah, I mean, even if it's a supporting letter from your, I don't know. I mean, you have to find some type of guidance counselor or some type of accredited school system. We have we have information overload right now. But I think those that have success, even those who have success, if they want to retain an attorney, are going to be those that say, hey, I did everything you said. And it turns out I'm actually eligible. And the guy at the desk still said no. And then your percentages, when you say, hey, what is my percentage, Jesse? Do I have a good case? I can say, well, you did a lot of good things. And I think we can use this. Right. But coming to me and saying, I got C's and D's is like, it's kind of like my son saying, hey, do you think that's good enough, Dad? I'm like, I don't know, but the consequences for you as a diversity visa applicant are enormous. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter if it's education. We're talking education today, but we're talking, if you want to rely on your job qualifications too, go on that. You have to be your best advocate. You don't want to call me. Nobody wants to call me. You don't want to email me. You want, come on. You want to come and visit maybe, right? You want to come here with a green card. So, but your lawsuit is prior to that interview. That is when you have to work.
Yeah. It actually says in the Foreign Affairs Manual, the Foreign Affairs Manual for others is the guidebook, if you like, the instructions given to consular officers on how they're supposed to evaluate cases and how they're supposed to operate. And it says under education evaluation in the FAM, it says the burden of proving that an applicant's education is equivalent to a high school degree is entirely on the applicant. You have that burden. The burden means the responsibility is yours. It's not the consular officer's fault if you fail to do that. The burden is on you. Yeah. So if you've got some documents and you think it might be at risk because for whatever reason you've heard rumors of people being not approved for the same reason, the burden is on you to sort that out. That's what Jesse's talking about. Prepare properly for that interview and get additional proof. Put some thought into that, and figure out how you're going to make sure you're not disqualified, you're not refused for that same case.
And we have such a I mean, again, I'm not a diversity visa applicant, but I see enough on the groups and whatever. There's so much great community sharing out there. I know it's usually directed towards visa bulletins and queues, but there really should be a discussion on this. Talk to those who are going to interviews, who have gone to them and been successful. What did you use? What were your documents? Because the other way we can really perhaps fix some severely, arbitrary decisions would be to show that the last 11 people who graduated from my, school sailed through. And
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Maybe the consular officer just had a bad day. And so there's a lot of discussions out there. I would say invest your time talking with people with similar educational backgrounds, see what works for them. And then, because, the consular officers are talking to each other, right? You're not going to be the first one from Somaliland who walks in with this certain diploma that's been rejected. They're all going to talk.
Yeah.
So we need to have a team on the other side and band together so we know what works and what doesn't. That's an opportunity.
Very good point. Yeah, very good point. So that's also people that have been through the interview process and either failed or succeeded. They need to report that back to us in the group so that we can see what works, what doesn't work, so that the next person has a better chance, right? And yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We should gear up in the community for that, particularly on some of these more, difficult cases. There is a situation about the free candidate situation at Morocco. You and I, Jesse, have talked about this gentleman that wrote to me on my blog who gave a very detailed account of how, according to this person, there is a new consular officer at the Morocco embassy who is applying a different standard than has been applied for a number of years. And this particular CO is looking for free candidate on the document that is presented and associates that with a non-formal course of education and therefore disqualifies the applicants. So, and because the term free candidate sometimes, but not all the time in Morocco, means that someone went through a sort of an informal route to get their education. Now, just last couple of things on this. There are some embassies that publish some information on their websites about what they expect. They're either through the websites themselves. Sometimes they have some information on the embassy specific instructions, which you get from the main instructions, where it says if you are selected and you go through the steps. And so, for example, I looked at a couple of these this morning. So for Colombo, I think it's Colombo, yeah. So for Sri Lanka, they specifically talk about a process to prove your education, which is showing your AL collection card, your A-level collection card. You've got to go through a process. You don't pick up your results. You actually pick up a document that lets them check your results. There's a similar sort of procedure that happens in West Africa, where I think it's what's the West African Education Council, and again, in order to cut down fraud, they have the education department have a way that the embassy can check your education credentials. You don't provide the documents; you provide them a key, if you like, to getting your documents. So that's an important thing to look at as well. And then also look at Facebook and Twitter postings of your embassy to see if they've ever had interactions. I've got one here, for example. I'll show you this one briefly. Let me just share this, where people have asked questions in the past to say, okay, I've got this education. Does that qualify? Right? And the embassy often answers these sort of questions directly. It gives us a really good clue. So here's someone that had the GCE levels, didn't do the A levels, right? And this is very similar to the English system. So I would know that would be a difficult thing. And then went through a company from the UK to get a higher national diploma in HND. This is kind of what I was saying earlier. Now I would know that would not be acceptable. And sure enough, the embassy said, no, that doesn't meet the qualifications. So at least they're giving a clear idea to a person before they come. This particular person went on to sort of argue that a little bit. HND is this level, and but I can tell you that the HND route, the embassy in this particular case are correct. It's not not the correct type of course, not the correct type of education. So they insist on the A levels. Just something to note. You can find out quite a bit of information, by doing your own investigations and checking those sort of websites, right? So please do that. Okay, Jesse. I think that was the main thing that we wanted to talk about, right? I don't know if there's any particular sort of other points that you wanted to make. You've recently formed your own company. How's it going? Are you doing much in the DV world, or are you just waiting for the Gomez outcomes? And
well, it's going well. I mean, I have 2 wonderful employees, and we're busy. But no, I mean, DV. I'm a federal litigator, right? So I handle all types of immigration-related litigation, and some actually non-immigration related litigation. So no, I'm happily staying away from the diversity visa because I don't think there's litigation that is necessary here. I mean, we do have. So I have like an arm's length look at it. I'm doing some adjustment of status cases for some diversity visa because I have done that in my past, but filing the forms, making sure they're in on time, making sure they're sufficient, making sure they're timely, helping people with that. But yeah, I mean, I want nothing more than never to litigate another diversity visa case, because hopefully they either make the system more fair and don't make it so stressful for everybody, or we don't go back to the dark ages when we couldn't even get a diversity visa.
Right.
I'm hoping diversity visa litigation is done, but we have to have some type of, I wish. It's so hard to get an understanding of diversity visas, the system and program. And the one thing that I'll never get over is the way we allow certain consulates to do whatever they feel like doing with the program. And I'm still seeing a little bit of that this year, right? Is that true, right?
Very much a case in point. So actually, a couple of people have asked me to talk about that. So I'll just briefly run through that. So DV 2023 is going pretty well in a lot of ways. So the DS-260 processing is almost entirely caught up now. So that they've processed, KCC have done a good job. And KCC have scheduled a lot more interviews, let's say this year, than they had last year. And there's already, I think, over 10,000 people issued. And so they've made some good progress. There's no doubt about that. However, there are still some of the usual candidates that are, frankly, destroying the chances of their local, the local area. Nairobi is one example. Accra, unfortunately, is another. Ankara are showing some backlogs as well. So there are several troublesome embassies. But based on previous litigation and experience of that, I don't think there's anything we can do about that, right, Jesse? I mean, unfortunately, they just have the right to set their own capacity levels. And if they set the capacity levels too low, then we're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned a lot through the years of what the judges are willing to do and not do. And if it's a no visa total shutdown, they're willing to step in. And if it's I don't think they're doing a good enough job, that's not going to work. And we tried that last year, and I think we spurred them to action. But by the time we got to September and they had shown proof that they actually had responded and issued and were on a good pace, we didn't have much of a case, unfortunately, even for the specific consulates that did nothing. And judges are just not willing to go to that level. I will say this, given the situation in Turkey, it's an unfortunate situation. I would say I would be transferring. I don't know. What do you think about that? I would be getting, if I was stuck in Turkey and Ankara, or I would be moving my case.
So people that can move from those troublesome embassies like Nairobi, Ankara, etc. Absolutely. I've been telling people in the last few weeks, look for transfer opportunities. Yeah. But unfortunately, people are doing that the wrong way. People are emailing KCC and saying, I'm at Ankara embassy. I want my interview to be at Abu Dhabi or wherever the hell they want to choose, right? Yeah. And they don't do it the right way. They ask for a transfer of the embassy to KCC, and KCC then decline that request. And now KCC know that you're trying to embassy shop.
Yeah.
And so they're basically then more inclined to deny that. What people should do is actually move, right?
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous, but if you're all of KCC processing works on the current address of where you live, and that's where they're going to schedule you. They actually don't care what you've selected in your DS260.
Well, yeah. The other thing is what you have to do is not ask the embassy or KCC where you're at. You have to ask the embassy where you want to be. And if they are willing to take you, okay, then you can go back to where you're at and say, hey, just so you know, Kuala Lumpur has actually agreed to take my case. And they haven't asked me for residency requirements. Some do, some don't. There's some rules. There's different rules for, it's not all uniform.
Right.
But you have to go and ask another embassy and have them take you because, of course, the current one you're at is going to be happy to send your case to another embassy. Are you kidding me? One more down? Maybe they get credit for it. They want to move. But you have to be accepted at a new embassy. And so I always tell people, and we did this kind of mad dash at the end, and I had some clients who were awesome at it. I mean, awesome. And it helped a lot of my plaintiffs get interviews just because they started doing it together and moving. It was from either Cairo or where they were stuck in. The other part was a lot of people in Accra were not allowed to move.
Right.
But people who were stuck in Nairobi and was it Sudan, they did move. And I know, and then of course our Sydney folks where they had the SUVA option, and then went there. So I think you have to be your own best advocate. I mean, I think that's a theme we've been drilling.
Yeah.
Stay on top of the game.
I want to pick up on what you were just saying there, because there's a couple of nuances to what you were just saying in terms of moving. So you could, prior to your case receiving the 2NL, you are at KCC and you might or might not be in an AV queue, right? The queue of people in AV status, right? So if you're in AV status, which is where you've actually been allocated to that embassy because your case has been processed and you're current, and now they've allocated you into one of these queues. There could be 1,000 people in that queue, 2,000 people. We don't know the numbers, but there could be a lot of people in those queues, right? And if you're in that queue, KCC will not unlock your case to change your address or to make any changes. And the only exception is what Jesse is saying about here, where if you're in the queue for Nairobi and Nairobi have not got the capacity, you're not going to be sent to Nairobi. So you have to contact another embassy, get an email from that embassy saying they are willing to accept your case. And then you don't actually contact Nairobi because Nairobi haven't got your case yet. They're not going to get your case ever because you're at the back of 1,000-person queue, right? So what you do is you contact KCC with the email you've received from the other embassy where you can get to, and you say, this embassy has accepted me, please transfer my case. That's the only time that you can be pulled out of an AV queue, right? A queue of people in AV status. So Jesse's absolutely right in talking about that. And I think it was Marek and others that sort of figured out this system and perfected the system in DV 2022 that helped a few people. It won't help a lot of people. It's not like they're going to allow 1,000, transfers like that, but it will help some. So some people can save your own cases.
Yeah.
But you have to be smart, and you have to be looking at the queue and the backlog for the embassy that you're assigned to.
Well, and again, you know this more than I do, but I'll just speak to it because I don't want to make it seem like it's like terribly easy. Some, especially in Africa, they have strict requirements, and if you make a misrepresentation, you may even get your interview, but you probably get a permanent bar because they're going to think you made a material misrepresentation. So if you say you live somewhere, you better live there. Don't show up with a tourist visa and you've now told the Department of State you lived there, but you have a tourist visa, because they will see that and they will say, you're never coming to the United States.
Right.
You lied.
You could say to an embassy, look, I live in Nairobi, but I can get to Johannesburg because my brother lives there and he's prepared to host me, and actually he owns a bakery and he's going to let me work there. And so, I don't live there now, but I can get there, right? That's the only other way. You've got to have a serious connection, a real connection to the country that you're moving to.
You know what you should do, really? You should start a business called DV Interview Prep. And we should really, this is maybe my entrepreneurial hat, but we should have like Simon's DV Interview Prep. It's like the SAT prep school where they have like the GMAT, like where you like prep books where we literally do DV prep interviews, because honestly, people, you got to show up prepared. We're hitting another theme here, but even when you're thinking about transferring and anything else, but a lot of those questions about, well, how did you end up today at this interview? Because the consular officer that you meet with that day is going to have no idea. They're going to see a guy walk in from Sudan into Johannesburg and say, buddy, how the hell did you get here?
Right.
And you need to be ready to address it. And you need to be ready to.
It can't be a lie. Because you say that will be, you've created a record of material misrepresentation.
And here's the other thing.
Not good.
Different consulates are going to treat people from different areas differently because they're human. Yeah. And we need to accept it. And we need to accept not everybody's as woke as Simon. Okay?
As to the business opportunity, lest I get even more accusations of UPL, I think I'll avoid that. Thank you.
Well, an interview prep I don't think that's legal advice.
I don't think anything I do is legal advice, Jesse, but it doesn't stop certain people suggesting that, as you well know, right?
Yeah. Hey, listen,
you bloody lawyers, you want all the business to yourselves.
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm coming on. Honestly, it's so funny because we should tell the audience so. We were talking and we did a show last year during the Super Bowl, and I actually reached out to Simon because I had people coming to me and I didn't want to take their case unless I thought I could win for them. And I wanted to talk through this educational stuff with Simon because I knew he knew it like the back of his hand. And we had this kind of engagement. So I didn't want to, and these were people who would have paid other lawyers.
Right.
And that's how we got here. So, we kind of mean it. Like I don't want to take money. I don't want to take money from people. Again, it's some people have no choice. Some people, so let's think about this case, because sometimes this works, and it worked last year for us. You're a Russian national and you went to an interview and the officer was rude and handed you a blank 221G sheet and said, yeah, we'll see you in October. We actually fixed one for someone last year. And that's a type of case where maybe you have no shot and you pay for the litigation because there's a delay and you've been stuck in AP. But more, the best dollars you can spend are on yourself before you walk into that interview.
Yeah, yeah.
So
actually, I did want to just mention, going back to the education thing, by the way, years ago when I was learning about DV, there was a lawyer, Bernie Woolsdorf, who was president of the AIDA, I think, who took special interest in DV. He actually produced a video and he had a very good PowerPoint. Taught me a lot of the sort of the ins and outs that I just think of standard information today. But he, in one of those PowerPoints or a subsequent video, I remember him saying that he was challenging the education and work experience requirements with Department of State and a couple of lawsuits at the time. This was years ago. I'm talking 10 years ago. So because he felt that for example, the SVP of 7 is not appropriate. He also felt the education standard was not being applied correctly. So he may know something. I know you know him or know
I'll tell you. Bernie, he runs one of the world's largest immigration firms. I know him personally. I visited with him a couple months ago out at his home in California. He is from South Africa, made his way to the shores of Boston, and is a self-made man with a tremendous family. And I'm sure, and it's funny because he actually had sent some South African clients my way last year, who ultimately all succeeded. And so it was a win-win-win there. Wow. But he is. He's really
maybe he got some information on some of this educational stuff. Maybe he's got some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sure he has. I mean, he's a nobody knows immigration more than he does. I mean, he's just reached that level. So
yeah, no, I pinged him years and years ago, but he didn't know me from Dick, so he didn't answer.
he's in your backyard, so I mean, I could certainly. He would love.
Don't tell me you came to see him in California and you didn't pop in to see me. Don't tell me that, Jesse.
Well, you know what? I know you're a busy man, and I was there for 3 days, and but yeah, I should have come. Next time, I will see you because
please do.
I do want to.
I'd love.
I really was. I should have.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. I think we should probably at time. I'm sure you're getting the the cheese balls or whatever together for the game this afternoon. Who are you supporting?
Rihanna, I think. I'm going for like the halftime show, but I think Mahomes is a genius. I love watching him play. I think he does things that nobody else has done before.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I just hope I hope he's not hurt and it's actually a competitive game. So hopefully I'm watching in the fourth quarter and not just for the commercial. So
right.
Do you want to hit any of these questions for 10 minutes or no?
I'd be happy to if you've got time. I'm delighted. You're seeing the questions, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I am. Any questions that you see that you want to pick? I'll deal with this one. Who is Jesse Bless?
That's my name. I like to give. So the thing is, what sucks? I mean, honestly, I'll tell you a true story. So when you own kind of your own firm, you have to do like this marketing stuff, and they want to put you on like TikTok and all that shit. Excuse me, all that stuff. And I just don't like it. And so it's kind of when I go on to some of these things, I do AKAs or aliases because I don't know. I never feel really good about the promotional stuff,
You could learn some dances and do some TikTok dances or something.
Yeah. Hire me as your immigration attorney. No. So no, Jesse Bless is my real name.
Jesse Bless, famous immigration attorney.
I don't know, infamous maybe.
Previously director of litigation at Ayla. So well connected, very well experienced, and the guy in charge of the Gomez class for the 2020 cases. So that's who Jesse Bless is. Okay, there's a couple of others that are good. Let's see. If you don't have a high school diploma, but you have a bachelor's or master's degree, does that qualify under education experience? That's a great question. A few years ago, 6 maybe years ago, they changed the wording of the FAM notes, and they added in the education, they added the words "at least," and they're saying, you must have this education, at least this education, and it opened the door to people that had got into higher education, like a bachelor's or a master's, to only show that. Now, what that means is consular officers at the interview, if you've got a master's degree or at least a bachelor's degree, and you show that, sometimes they will be satisfied with only that, and they won't go back into your the way you got there, right? In other cases, though, you'll present that degree, and they will still ask you about the formal course of education that you took to actually get into college or university. So definitely start off with your highest degree and then show other stuff, right? And you may just be approved on the master's or the bachelor's. And also the other point you make in that question is about the diploma. Not every education system issues a diploma, but there should be a concept, some sort of concept of successful completion of an education course of education. And so if there are final exams and that sort of thing, and you got, Fs, fails in 3 or 4 of the critical subjects, then your education is probably not going to get you into a university, and therefore would not get you into the DV, right? So that was a good question. Thank you for that one. In the internships, should you add internships? I always say no to this one, Jesse. Like, internships are not employment. They're usually unpaid, although that's changing in this country.
Yeah, they're not going to count for the years.
They're not going to count, exactly. So I, generally speaking, no, unless it's very significant. Like if you interned at Google or you interned at Apple or something that shows that you've got a direct path into into a very good job, then list that, because it helps with your public charge perception. But it's not really going to help with sort of normal work experience. Okay, question here for you, I think, there, Jesse. Just wanted to make sure, after I filled out my form, I was rejected in the F1 visa twice. Should I unlock my DS260 and update to I was rejected before I was rejected after filing DS260? So someone who is rejected for an F1 visa, often I get a similar question: is I was rejected for this non-immigrant visa. Is that going to hinder me getting my DV? Now I typically answer no, because the most common rejections for non-immigrant visas is immigrant intent, right? But would you like to elaborate on that?
I mean, I think, yeah. So a lot of times when you go for a non-immigrant visa, like an F1, you have to show that you're planning on returning. And if not, they issue what is a 214B, because they don't think that you have the requisite non-immigrant intent. Now here, if you've been accepted for if you've been accepted for the diversity visa program and you've submitted a DS-260, it is appropriate for the Department of State to say, well, you have immigrant intent. That's exactly what you're trying to do. And when you go and get an F1, and this is really dangerous because I've seen this happen, they could actually tell you that you're inadmissible to the United States forever because you've misrepresented your intent. Because you're trying to say you have non-immigrant intent on an F1, and in fact, they know you've already declared that you want a green card.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really careful. And I know some people who have a pre-existing B1, B2 will try to enter the United States. Sometimes it works. I do think there's times where you can have your intent can change, but here applying for a non-immigrant visa, which requires non-immigrant intent after you've won the lottery and pursued through a DS-260, dangerous game. Don't do it.
That's the key point. So to apply for the lottery is not showing immigrant intent. To win the lottery is not showing immigrant intent. But filling out the DS-260 is an application for immigration. So yes, that is the point at which you have then put that on record that you've got immigrant intent, and that can always be brought back up against you in a non-immigrant visa in the future. But if that happens very suddenly, then that would be the problem, and you could end up in the consequences that Jesse's talking about there. Be careful. Here's an interesting one. So Abdi Razak, so saying, the question is, can I go back to Somalia before traveling to the US when I receive my visa? And the answer is yes. You can travel to the USA. When you've got your visa in hand, you're traveling to the USA, you can travel from anywhere. You may go through the UK, you could go through Australia, you could go through Mars. It doesn't matter where you arrive from, right? The visa you have is not dependent on where it was issued or your home country or anything like that. However, this is exactly the case in point that Jesse was saying earlier. Okay, so you're a Somalia winner. You probably interviewed, I would say probably in Nairobi. How did you pass? Like what was your education? Please put a note on BritSimonsSays.com with your interview experience. I've got a place on my blog which is for interview experience. And please detail, for the sake of other people, how your educational documents were perceived, how you got approved. Right?
Pay it forward. Pay it forward is right.
Pay it forward. Yeah, exactly. I've spent 10 years paying it forward. And believe me, Jesse has done a hell of a lot of pro bono work, a hell of a lot. So yeah, we're pay it forward people. Please be the same. Okay. Let me see. Do you see any questions you'd like to answer there, Jesse?
Someone asked me why I keep the blur on in my background. It's usually because my wife is terrified. Sometimes she'll walk in and she doesn't want to see herself on the screen, so she makes me blur my background. So that's the answer. I was doing a live session yesterday. My wife came in to get some keys, and I said, "You want to come in and say hi?" And she said, "No." Yeah.
like instant stage fright.
It's a true story. It's a true story. But my wife got, God bless her. She raises our children, but she has no idea what I do, and she has no interest in knowing what I do. She doesn't have Twitter. She doesn't have social media. If I said Gomez to her, she would tell me that I've screamed it a couple times in my sleep, but otherwise totally oblivious, which is fine.
Man, oh man, that's funny. Quick question here. I submitted the DS260 in July and my daughter didn't have a passport, but now she got her passport. Do I have to unlock in order to put her passport? We're not yet current. You actually don't. And this is, Jesse, I'd like your perspective on this. I always say to people, look, the DS260 should have been accurate at the time it was submitted. Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, you don't have to update it. If you change your job, if you change something, I don't know, that's innocuous, not such a big deal, don't unlock for that. Only unlock to correct mistakes, serious mistakes that would cause you a problem during the interview.
I guess the standard maybe is like life-changing event. Like you have a child.
Material changes.
Yeah,
exactly.
You have a child. You get married.
You got married. Exactly. I do think it's important if people have underpopulated social media or address history or education and work experience history. Those questions are all historical. They want a history. And if you don't give a full history, you're more likely to get a DS5535 where they ask you more questions about your background. And so it's important, I believe, to make sure your DS260 is well completed for those things like social media and address and everything else. Mm-hmm. However, if you change your address, unless it's life significant changes, then no, don't just unlock your DS260 to make that change. It's not necessary, right? Okay. If someone of Ethiopian citizens has been selected to DV Lottery 2023, his education level is college diploma. Is it good enough qualification? I'm always a little bit nervous of answering these, Jesse, because I don't know all of the educational systems in all of the countries. So I refer people back to instructions and that sort of thing, rather than necessarily giving them a sort of rubber stamp saying, yeah, you'll be good, you won't be good, or whatever.
Yeah, but that's a good point that maybe I need to say, because I get this a lot and people can contact me through my website and I get it and I tell them, I really don't know. Like they'll send me their diploma and say, is this good enough? I said, I can't even read it. I have no idea. So it's not as if I'm an educational guru. I'm maybe a diversity visa guru who can tell you what the consulate is looking for, maybe, broadly speaking. But I think what we've kind of found out today is we need to do a better job within the community of sharing our own experiences and diplomas so that you all can understand from each other what diplomas are satisfying consulates and what are not. And each year it's going to be different. So I don't know. And the other thing is this, the word diploma means a lot of different things in a lot of different languages. And so does sometimes secondary education, university. So it's really about getting local with it, right?
Right, exactly.
And I'm not local.
No, exactly. You've got to use local knowledge, etc. You can't expect a couple of guys in the USA to understand educational systems around 180 different countries in the world and just give you an instant answer. And because the embassies change their standards year to year, I wouldn't want to do that. There used to be a book that published that, but I wouldn't rely on it because it did get out of date very quickly. Joe here, you'll probably recognize the photo from. He generally goes on your immigration updates with Chuck and team.
Yeah.
Right. So how realistic is my plan to expect decision of DV 2020 case in March and issuing visas in November? Okay. It's like
it's kind of like asking me if hurricane season is going to be stormy. Exactly. I'm sure this. I think we're going to. The issue is this: there could be a decision issued that causes the government to appeal or causes us to appeal even further.
Yeah.
And that could delay it. And then the other thing is, keep in mind, let's say it all goes our way and we win. It has to go back to Judge Mehta, who then has to decide for Gomez. The other cases could complicate even other things, but for just 9,095 for 2020, or maybe there's more because of the other litigation, but let's just focus on Gomez for a second. Then we have to figure out, well, how are we going to put the mousetrap? How are we going to put it back together? Who's going to get visas? And who doesn't want them anymore?
Right.
And there's almost going to have to be some type of secondary lottery. And it has to be as close to the statute as possible. And why do I say that? Because Judge Mehta said that, not me. And so we're going to have to come up with a fair, and that is a word that means many different things to people, a fair way to hopefully distribute the visas. And then people are going to have to update their medicals and civil documents. Okay. Yeah. Right. Because they're not going to just say, hey, here's a visa, come on in. We don't know what you've been doing since 2020. So it's going to, and hopefully they don't make you pay for that, but they probably will. And then we're going to have an interview. So I don't think November is realistic in my view. No. I wish it was yesterday, but there's a lot that has to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Semmel's asking a similar question, whether there's a deadline for the appeal decision, essentially, but there is no deadline, and it could go on. And as you just very well pointed out, the mechanics of actually how these things will work, whether it's 21 or 2020 cases, has yet to be worked out, right? So
you know what I really want. The best thing. I mean, this is really something that I want to say. I really hope that it's as narrow win as possible. I'd like to win very, very small, meaning I want them to say, your clients win, and I want them to do it in such a way that they don't dare take an appeal to the Supreme Court. Yeah. That is my best thing. I don't want them to win and say, you know what, we win and that whole thing and this and add things to it or create a new law. I want them to say, on this case, in this facts, on these facts, these 9,095, they get their visas. Don't come in here. And if they do it in that way, which I kind of think they will, because we had a very difficult judicial panel, if they could do that in a narrow way so that they don't open the door to other lawsuits, even though I'm a litigator, I don't want it. If they do it in that way, I think we can skate out of there, get your visas, and just close the book.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's my real. Honest to God, I would like nothing more.
Yeah, people often ask, are the government doing this because they hate immigrants? In fact, Joe asked this question earlier: does Biden support illegal immigration? The thing is that they're fighting over principles, a couple of very important principles that the government hold very dear to themselves, right? And so what Jesse's talking about now is we don't want a judgment so powerful that the government have to go back into fighting mode about these very powerful principles. So
you touched on it. I mean, let's just be real clear. So Biden doesn't give he's a politician. What do politicians care about? They care about power, right? If in the State Department is an extension of the president, so when you think of the consulates and the State Department and the KCC, that's Biden. And so what does Biden want? Biden wants power. He wants the power to tell you when you can come, who gets a visa, what educational requirements are met or not, all that stuff. He wants that. Now, if the judges come in, right, because they're a branch of government in the United States, they call them Article 3. The president is Article 1, and the Congress is Article 2. If Article 3 comes in and says, hey, you overstepped your power, and we're going to tell you, no, you messed up, issue these visas. Well, guess what? Biden thinks he just lost a little bit of power. So what we're fighting over who gets to say, who gets the power, who has the ultimate power. And it's no different than, let's say, what Biden wants to do right now when he's granting everyone parole, right? Or he's giving certain communities parole. Now we have states coming in and say, hey, you can't have that power. We're some states. And we say, you can't do that. And it's always a power. So when you think about these big principles, it's not about hating people of color, although some people do. And it's not about hating people. It's about, I want all the power. I want to tell you what you can do and when you can do it. I don't even care what I'm talking about, right? I'm the president, but I just want to be able to do it. And that's what we're talking about.
Right.
So that's why I think if you sat Joe Biden down and explained to him, if you had like 15 minutes of his time, went like cognizant, like he was like focused with you, and you said, hey, do you know that former SOB denied visas to all these diversity visa applicants that you said you love so much, and that your current administration is actually defending that? Do you think that's a good thing? He would say, no, it's not a good thing. But exactly. You know what? He's not dealing with that.
No, exactly. No, exactly. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly how it's working. All right.
Well, and you know what it is too, because Biden, to the extent he cares, the only thing that he'll hear from like Blinken or some of the people who work under Blinken would be this: if you don't allow us to fight this case, we'll have no power. And so Biden says, well, hey, wait a minute, I got my Secretary of State over here saying that they're trying to take this power away from us. That's how they view it, right? Yeah. That's how they view it.
It's a presidential power, and they've got to protect all the goodies.
And what's awesome about it is the way they these sons of bitches, right? So they'll say, hey, let us keep all the power, right? Let us keep all the power. And then you say, well, okay, can you issue those 20,000 visas? And they're like, oh man, no, that's Article 2. That's Congress. We can't do that.
Right.
We don't have the power. So power is a malleable thing, right? Yeah. You say you want it all, and then you say, oh, wait. And then when you finally ask for something, you say, man, can't help you. That's the other guy.
Yeah, exactly. Mind you, they've shot themselves in the foot again. I mean, in what they did, I'm very pleased with how they responded to DV 2022. Actually, quick thing. You said earlier the lawsuits in 22 were not successful. I would argue against that. I think your case in Sydney is what Suva, reacted to.
Yeah.
I think the incredible progress we saw in the second half of the year was because they were reacting to not wanting to lose lawsuits again. So I think lawsuits worked, but nevertheless, I mean, the other thing is, from a point of view of protecting power, etc., that's what they've got to do. They feel like that, and then they point at what Congress says, and then they do something silly like the law says we can only issue 55,000 visas, and then they issue almost 56,000. So don't tell us that you can't do things.
Oh yeah,
right. And then go ahead and do those things, like issuing visas after the end of the year or issuing more than the 55,000 when you've already done those things.
I will bet you a trip to California, to your house, and we will have lunch on the beach, that if we win Gomez and good luck, that number will be cited in the decision.
Right.
I just believe it. And I believe that may be a reason why they can't go up to the Supreme Court, because how are they going to argue against both sides of their mouths? And the only way they could do it would be to say this. Yeah, well, we have the power because we're the president. And guess what? You can't tell us you can't fix what we did because the year has already passed. Right? So it's a power grab. It's always about power. I mean, often, especially when we're talking in the immigration space, because we can't steal money, right? So we're not in like the crypto land where we're stealing money from people. What are we stealing? We're stealing power. That's the currency in immigration. It's about who's telling people who can enter or not. Money's not involved. It's all about power. So it's not about money when we're talking about immigration. And you see it very much so. It's the same thing when what President Trump did and what Joe Biden is trying to do in different areas. It's all about executive authority. And then it's all about the judiciary coming in and saying, you don't have that power, sir. You don't have that power. And then when we have like a DeSantis administration and everything goes back to shutting it down, I'm doing diversity visa 2027 class actions where it's all going to be the other way. And it's all about it. It's a power. It's, you have to view it through that lens, I think.
Yeah. Actually, sorry if you've got a couple of minutes for me to just go political on your ass for a minute.
No. That's about all as political as I get. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So new immigrants coming to the country need to be very cautious in where they choose to live, because if you go to certain states right now, Florida, for example, is a great place to live. I used to live there for a while. It's wonderful. It's great. But the political situation in Florida right now is stripping people left, right, and center of their rights, normal human rights, etc. And there's, I think it's only going to get worse, because I know a lot of Floridians who love DeSantis, love what he's doing. They see him as a powerful man. They want him to be the president of the USA. So, and DeSantis is doing some wackadoodle stuff. So be careful of the states you go to, guys, because they could easily make a law that says, you know what, if you came to this country in the last 5 years or 10 years, then you don't get to have the same rights as Americans, because you're not real Americans.
This is I've heard this before, and I think it's the most it's very true of where I live in New England, how people view immigration. Generally, they support it. It's like DACA or anything else. But the other thing is this: it's like, do you want these people coming to your country from, and they all have, they're all from the southern border, right? People forget we actually have a northern border where people come from, and we actually have ports of entry for people fly in, or they come through like the ocean. Yeah, exactly. Like walls don't stop planes. Anyway, so, but people always are like, oh man, no, kick them all out. And it's like, what about the guy down the street who's a second generation? Oh, Julio? Oh, no, don't get Julio. Oh, Julio's my best friend. No, you can't kick him out. Yeah. So that's what people, when you make it personal, when you describe for them, or it's so funny because you see it with children, because children don't know that you need a visa sometimes, right? They don't know. And we have, the community of Afghan refugees who've now, thank goodness, made it here. And some of them have children and some of them are in schools. And it's just like, yeah, they just moved here. Yeah. They think it's cool, right? Children think it's cool. So if we view it through that lens, like, and I think, when I look at immigration, people are like, what's your view on immigration? I'm like, it's a damn shame we can't kick some of the U.S. citizens out.
Yeah.
That maybe we should change that. But, again, it's DeSantis. Politicians don't have the immigration is extremely hard. Diversity visas are extremely hard to understand. 1% of the 1% probably understand 10% of it. Okay. So people don't understand it. Joe Biden doesn't know the Immigration and Nationality Act any more than he knows how to take an Amtrak to freaking, actually does know how to take an Amtrak.
He knows how to take Amtrak, yeah.
But they don't know. When DeSantis rails off, and ships people to Martha's Vineyard, he was doing them a favor honestly, because now they're never leaving. So, faux pas for him. But now Congress is allocating money, or the Florida, I think, legislature is allocating money so they can ship people anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
And what we don't understand, and I always tell people this, and I said it, I kind of referred to it a minute ago. When I look at immigration, and I would love, if I had infinite wealth, I would become a politician. I really would. Mm-hmm. What I would say is, when you look at an issue, you have to look at it through a children's point of view. And what I mean by that is, what would be the best interest of the child? So if I had a Ukrainian child or a child from Accra whose mother won the diversity visa, do I give a hoot if she got a C on her boards? So I'm going to deny her a diversity visa, so her child is not going to have the opportunity to come over here, play college football, do something great. Right. Are we better off as a society by denying that person a visa? And if you look at it through the children's lens and the family dynamic, the answer is often no. And what we don't understand is this: people have to look at it also through economics. The countries with the youngest average age usually will have the highest economic growth.
Yeah.
And if you look at Japan, China, they're screwed. Germany, they got issues. And the United States is not so bad because we've had will have a vibrant, well, not always, but we've had a vibrant immigrant population who replenishes our
middle population, the middle,
I mean, and that's what's needed. So people, we just don't understand. I mean, honestly, that we give people votes, we vote for people who wouldn't know a visa if it was in their own freaking wallet. They have no idea.
Right. Oh, some of those countries know, though. Germany, for example, when there was a humanitarian crisis going on a few years ago, and UK was saying, yeah, we'll take 10,000 extra immigrants, and France was saying, yeah, we'll take 20,000. Germany stood up and said, yeah, we'll take 1 million. Right? They, because they have got a problem of an aging population. They're lazy and fat, old Germans. And the thing that they need is new young blood who are fighting to get somewhere in life. That's what immigration is,
Well, and I tell you, one of the things that I think our country, I'll give it somewhat credit for, unlike some of the countries maybe in Europe that are struggling, is we do, once we're here and there are neighbors down the street, we do allow them to assimilate, and we encourage them, and we want everyone to do it. I think that's the second part. That's kind of let them in and let them thrive with us. Yeah. Be a part of that community, embrace that they have different cultures, but also welcome them in. I mean, I was just down in Florida myself, and we're certainly not stopping people from opening restaurants from all over the world. Right. And if you can play basketball or baseball, you're welcome here.
Yep.
And so it's that's another way to look at it. People love talent more than they love anything else. And going back to the educational requirements, show up to your interview like you're talented, because you are.
Yeah.
Give them what you got.
Yeah. Young, energy, skills, whatever it is you have to offer. America needs that. So, and 7 foot tall Ethiopians do very, very well in basketball.
Let's take it. Yeah, do it. And the other thing too is, a lot of people, come to me and say, well, tell me how I can get to the United States. There's this little thing called Google, man, and Bing now, and they got like AI built into it, and you can look it up, and you may be extraordinary. We give people visas just for being extraordinary. Yeah. And it's hard to be. Not everyone's extraordinary, but maybe if you're 7 feet tall, you're extraordinary. So no, I mean, I just, I really just hope everyone out there, the message today is really, let's work together to solve this educational crisis. I think hopefully without hiring an attorney, but if you feel like you need one, hire them. Yeah. Hire them. Don't hire me. You can if you want, but I mean, there's help available. But help yourself first. Help yourself first.
Exactly. Avoid the problem by going properly prepared to the interview. Jesse, we'll wrap it up. But look, there's a ton of questions in the chat that I didn't get to. So please, for those people that want a question answered, go to BritSimonSays.com. Put your question in there, because it's the one place that I can guarantee I've got a full list of all the questions there, and I work through them, and I answer every question on there. So, I'm also available through Twitter and through Telegram channels and that sort of thing, but I can't always guarantee to keep up with the messages through there. So the one place I can guarantee you'll be answered is on BritSimonSays.com. All right? So put those questions in there. Jesse, thanks for your time. Love you, man.
We're going to come back. We're going to do a Gomez session, good or bad. I will come on and answer the best I can. Yeah, we'll see.
Crossing my fingers for that outcome. I feel good about it, but obviously we can't really tell. I mean, it was like we out of the 3 judges, we have one we're never going to win over. It's all about that judge in the middle, right?
Yeah, Judge Katsas. I mean, again, I was there. I thought, I will say this. I was, sometimes attorneys don't always get along on social media and otherwise, but I thought every attorney showed up for their own clients that day and did their very best. I was very impressed with our side. We definitely, everyone was prepared. I mean, Nicolette all the way to Chuck and everyone in between. I was trying to row with them, and I think I'm very proud of the advocacy that we've done for people. But we're not done yet, and we got to do more. So listen, everyone out there, be safe. Simon, what are you doing for the game? Like, what is your thing? What are you doing?
Actually, for the first time in years, we're literally just sitting at home, just the 3 of us, watching the game. We normally have friends over and we do something or we go somewhere, but we've got a fairly big house, so we tend to host. But this year, for whatever reason, it just hasn't come together, and we're just okay. We'll do it ourselves, no biggie. So I'm just gonna sit down and have a couple of beers and some cheese balls or whatever, and
yeah. Well, I know you have a big Valentine's Day planned on Tuesday, so you don't want to save up for that. Rose petals from the doorstep to the wherever. So I know you're a romantic.
On Valentine's Day, my wife and I will spend the day together.
You don't buy into the American holiday per month. You have to have a holiday every month.
Oh yeah, no, I get enough vacation time from my job that I could take I could take plenty of that. I used to be worried about the PTO policies in the States compared to Europe, but after you've been in a company for a few years, you actually get a pretty decent amount of PTO. So
yeah,
I'm fine. I can take time.
You be good, and we'll see you at the other side.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye now.